Cradle, The Rise of the Chosen, Chapter 6. His mind seemed to open its eye truly for the first time, and when he opened his real eyes, he was confused. The streets were sparse with people. Litter was here and there. The street signs were in English, and the cars, though provoking compared to their dearth in his tribe's nation, were more or less familiar. He would have been more disappointed if he weren't so aware of his mortal danger. He scurried to the nearest alley and sat on the ground by a stinking puddle and looked up to check if the sky was blue instead of red like they, the shamans, said hell had. It was blue, obvious, but welcomed. His leather Zrudu jacket wouldn't do. They'd know he was a prim, which was short for primitive. He could discard it, but going shirtless was prim too. Plus, though he forgot about it, he was trying to grow a zine. He had to change and blend in before anyone of note saw him. He was in Hartford, a metropolis of modern life, and bankrupt on morals, but functioning, barely, by his democratic adherents. Takuma thought he'd expect such freedom-loving people to welcome his people, or tribes in general, with open arms, but such couldn't be further from the truth. The concept of being civilized was revered under the low-pitched threat of Cradle falling like Earth did after the dissolve. The Prims would take Cradle's people the wrong way was the thrust of this whole system of discrimination. Takuma was preoccupied with the feeling he had now, though. He stopped moving and put his back against a worn brick wall, and he saw. 2 buildings down, a door opened a crack. On the right by the bathroom was a bedroom with a dresser in the corner by a low window with clothes that would roughly fit him. He stood up and left the alley and took a left and jogged 2 buildings down to see a forest green door ajar. He slipped in quickly and went down the old-smelling hallway and felt the apartment was 3 doors down. And he turned its knob and it gave. Inside, he rushed down the hallway off the living room and went in the room next to the bathroom and saw a pigeon sitting outside the sill of the low window. And he went into the dresser and found blue jeans and a black t-shirt and changed quickly, lest anyone come home soon. However, something told him this time was slightly precious. He had to know the extent of his power, or at least scratch its surface to know what he was working with. He sat on the cushy foot of the bed with his floral patterned comforter, and he thought how or what would need to be tested. He took a deep breath and saw that there was a lighter in the top right drawer of the lower vanity dresser next to the one he got his clothes from. He got up and opened that drawer, and sure enough, there was a silver flip-top lighter. He put it back. He thought in stillness for a moment. Randomly, he thought of a drawing of a giraffe on white paper in the center drawer of the low vanity dresser. Quickly, he opened it and sunk in disappointment when he only saw a blank white sheet of paper. He closed the drawer slowly, he thought. Just wait, try again, he whispered to himself. He opened the drawer, and now the white paper had a yellow blob on it, drawn in crayon. He sighed and closed the drawer again, feeling that he really needed to get out these people's apartment. Patience, okay? Try again. His heart was beating out of his chest as he looked at the paper now with a giraffe drawn on it. He let it fall to the floor. It felt like he was going to pass out, so he sat on the foot of the bed again and he thought he might be able to teleport back home. I wish I could, but I know. Then he got an idea. He closed his eyes and tried with all his spirit, and after a few intense moments of concentration, he felt that he might have achieved what he tried. However, he looked around the room and then through the whole apartment, and what he wanted to happen did it. I need to get out of here. Out on the street, the sun was painfully bright, and the cars that passed annoyed Takuma deeply. They ruined the world, in his opinion. He just wasn't fascinated by their speed. They were just waste, simply put. You called? His voice came from behind Takuma, and the young man's heart banged inside his chest. What is this power? Takuma asked more to himself and still hadn't turned around. Go to that window and look at your eyes, the man suggested. Takuma crossed the width of the sidewalk and looked into the black glass window, and he jolted from shock. He had the Ryujutu Itoriyama. His first pebble was still there in blue, but in his left eye there were 6 more pebbles, and they were large and green, and they circled his pupil in the iris completely. He was behind him, he saw in a hooded black cloak. "Kudos, what is happening?" Takuma asked, and then saw his Dolemon's face. He looked like he was in his 70s. "What happened to you? My God, what happened to you?" "You fool, don't speak the language here," Kudos exclaimed. Still in shock and trying to catch his breath, Takuma nodded and asked, "Sorry, but what happened?" "Take us to a park nearby. I know your power is new, but you can do it," Kudos directed. "I feel it, but I can't teleport yet. We'll just have to walk." "Where'd your faith go, Kusa?" "Something is just up with me. I feel fragmented." "I can understand. Let's get somewhere safe," Kudos offered. He had a cane. Takuma just noticed, but he seemed strong enough not to need it. They sat on a park bench with their backs to a thick patch of tall evergreens. Trash was strewn and floating here and there in the wind, and there wasn't many people at all, and none were close. "What happened?" Takuma asked. "You went up the rock to go away with the Volkomen, and suddenly I arrived in Hartford as a 60-something-year-old, Kudos explained. "That can't be it. I didn't age." "No, you didn't." Kudos stroked his zine. It was long and had many strands of gray. "Do you have any memories that you can't explain?" "No, I felt the Volkomen touch between my eyes, and I ended up here like an hour ago," Takuma explained. "I do." Kudos paused as he thought. Takuma looked at his protector and saw weariness in his expression. "I remember walking down pearl streets with golden cathedrals and lakes of mists and swans, violet skies and rains of flower petals and snow. All beautiful, but I don't know what it was for." "What do you mean?" "What it was for was peace, right?" "I guess you could say, but I had no job, no duty that I could remember. And now I'm old and I don't know why or what to do with my life, other than serve you," Kusai. They sat in silence for several moments as the breeze cut through the heat here and there. "We gotta get the hell out of here," Kudos added. "I don't know about that," Takuma responded. "Yeah, why would they send you here if you weren't supposed to stay? I'm gonna get it." "I'm sure it doesn't have to be that way. Whatever you think, you have to go through," Kudos answered. Takuma glanced at Kudos and noticed the scar under his left eye. "The scar? No idea." "Well, okay, it's like a page was ripped out of a book and I see myself in Hartford. And I know it's not good, but it is for the good. The path is lit by the Itoriyama," Takuma explained choppily the best he could. "Did you see me?" "Perhaps, but I know that you are free to do as you choose. I'm coming with you. I haven't much to live for anymore anyway. I want to see if I can make it back to those pearl roads," Kudo said. They sat at the bar, quiet and solemnly, for approximately 30 minutes. Takuma nodded and Kudos took off his hood, exposing his salt and pepper zine. "Siktik ulikmu tolipunti. Look at all these losers, little bitches," Takuma said and sipped his cola. "Maria de Cuetu yo. Should all be wearing skirts." All the bar's patrons looked at them, and the bartender picked up his screen and it lit up blue in the dim room. After 5 intense minutes, 4 tough-looking police officers in tactical gear came through the door and followed the eyes of the customers to Takuma and Kudos. One of them seemed to nod when he saw the zine, as if he realized something suddenly. "You guys prim?" the tall, bald, brown officer asked. He had on mirrored sunshades. "Yeah, officer," Takuma answered. "Put your hands behind your backs," the policeman ordered. Takuma took a casual sip of his cola and cleared his throat. "Take us to Richard Nichols, and you'll make a cool 10G," Takuma said, and Kudos looked at Takuma in astonishment. The cops huddled together and murmured for about 5 minutes. Finally, the tall, bald officer approached them again. "Come on, out with us." Takuma and Kudos stood up from their stools. "Vinbit Noit Lekyu," Hope you know what you're doing, Kudo said. They were in a part of the forest near the northeast end of Hartford. As Takuma stepped out of the back of the black police van, he saw the complex, but what caught his eye was the dirty-looking brownstone building with the green shutters and steelwork balconies. He knew Richard Nichols' office was in there. He could practically see the nude pictures hanging on his walls. A large, pot-bellied, bearded man greeted the officers in the front dirt yard where some prim slaves were smoking meat, probably to be served to the paid lackeys of Nichols rather than go to the other slaves. They were handed over, and the handler looked like he was going to strike Kudos on the back of the head to prove a point, but the look Kudos gave him stopped the large man in his tracks. Nonetheless, they were shackled as they watched the cops walking away back towards their van, counting their cut. There were nude photos on the wall, and it made Takuma ashamed for some reason. He didn't think he was that innocent, but he'd never looked at a woman so cheaply before. It made him feel like Bintui, nutless man. Looky here, Richard Nichols said with his boots up on his rickety desk and a cigar in his mouth. He had brown singus, dreads, and a stringy black mustache. The two Pojiros stayed quiet in their shackles and on their knees. It was hot in the office, and Nichols was hogging all the fans. Iolti Name, you think I don't know the talk? Waroti Buin Opilu. That's how I make my money, chaps. Kudos grunted, and Takuma looked over at him to check if he really was going to do something, but he saw that he wouldn't. I see that you have a damn impressive Itoyama there, kid. You'll see Soip tomorrow for sure. What do I need with this old one? He has a limp. Can't do no work. Kuliti, Giopti, Jiti, Notbu Neetomi, Itoyama. Master, keep him here with me. You know you can trust me because of my Itoyama. Richard Nichols thought for a moment. Take them and put them up. They sat on the dirt floor of the caged-in cell. There was a man lying on his side snoring with small leaves in his hair and ripped, longer shorts. Are we going to eat? Kudos asked the guard as he locked the bars. You're not in the system yet. Wait until tomorrow and don't bug me again, the portly guard said and walked away. Here you go, Takuma said and handed Kudos a full right fig. Ah, thanks, Kudos said and bit into the sweet-looking fruit. Ijio, a little magic trick, Takuma explained and ate his own fig. It had to be 1 in the morning and Takuma nor Kudos could sleep. Then one of the slaves was whistling non-stop for hours. Finally someone yelled, "Would you shut the hell up?" But the man, wherever he was, in the cell block kept on going until numerous other slaves started yelling at him, but whoever it was didn't stop until the sun rose. Takuma was working in the tobacco field, ferrying bales of tobacco from the rows of produce into the trucks. It was grueling, and they barely let him stop for water or food, and he couldn't use his powers because the foreman's eyes was on him. He worked for 11 hours and was sent to Nichols' office as promised. There she stood next to Nichols' desk. She had massive singus and bands around both her biceps and rings or 2 on every finger. Takuma hoped she was all show. "Soap, do your magic," the slave master ordered. She walked over to Takuma, who was on his knees, and grabbed him firmly under the chin and looked directly into Itoyama. Definitely royalty. He isn't rich though. He has funny luck. A leader type. Ooh. Ah. She started chuckling. He has Siondio. Soap and Richard laughed hysterically for a few moments. The fat master even had a tear in the corner of his eyes. Sikilo, Takuma muttered. Gilio? What's that? Soap, take him to the brothel. We'll fix him right. Soap winked ironically at Takuma, and they took him away. He lay in a bed of silk, all his clothes were off. The whore was naked and rubbing rose-scented oil everywhere on his body. Takuma tried to leave or do something using his power, but nothing was working. It couldn't be Soap. She was weak. The horse stroked her black hair for a moment and started rubbing Takuma's thigh. Please don't. This is important to me. I have seen you. This means a lot to me. You don't know what you're doing. The whore chuckled and then bit on Takuma's earlobe, and he stiffened. She knew what she was doing. Then she started kissing on his chest and kept kissing lower and lower. Please, my sindio is very important. Shut up, you sissy, she whispered. She got on top of him and he broke. Please, and he wept in anguish, and it was such a bitter cry. It didn't make him feel better by catharsis. He was suffering, and the world seemed to go cold. Surprisingly, the sex worker climbed off of him and whispered, You better tell them I broke your sundia. If you don't convince Seal, I'll frame you for theft. You know what they do to those who steal from nickels. Beauty fumo, you wish you were never born. They refused to give Takuma and Kuro's dinner again for the second night for some reason. Takuma's power returned and they ate of figs and sweet dates. What did they have you do? Takuma asked. I folded laundry for 12 hours. My back is killing me. Takuma stopped eating. Is it now? Hey, Kuro exclaimed. Takuma winked at him. That night, the man, whoever he was whistling even louder and more obnoxiously, and the threats thrown at him were more furious than ever, but he persisted until sunrise. Takuma couldn't get much sleep either. They had Takuma plowing half of the huge field from sunrise until sunset, and if he couldn't heal himself the little he could, he'd have been in excruciating pain. There was no question. That night, the man bellowed this time. He was singing songs that seemed to be made up nonsense or terribly out of key, and so silly it was irritating on an innate level. But this time, the man's cell was directly across from Takuma's, and he saw the thin but sinewy man. Takuma was furious, and he couldn't help but teleport into the man's cell, which only surprised Takuma apparently. Takuma stood above the man as he sat and sang against the wall, smiling tauntingly. Finally, the man looked up into Takuma's eyes, and the man's eyes were shining so brightly that Takuma had to turn his head and close his eyes for a moment. Iopti miontio. Took you long enough, son, the man said plainly.